What is the deal, beautiful people? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ramon, and around here, we discuss any and everything photography. Today's topic is something that took me a lot of tussling to really address. And a lot of people see this particular thing as a good thing. And a lot of us sometimes arrive to you might want to let that go. And I'm talking about perfection.
1, 2, get down.
About 2 years ago at this point, which places us squarely in the middle of the pandemic, myself, much like everyone else in the world, we had a chance to pause. And I say chance, not opportunity, because it wasn't a good reason we were pausing. And I really got to apply a 360 methodology to not only my craft as an artist, but also as a professional photographer, right? And I really I was able to scrutinize every single piece of me as a photographer and really start to address some of the negative parts of it, which, some days you wake up and you don't want to touch a camera. Some days you get home and I don't want to edit shit, right? Like, where's this coming from? And it took me a while to really hammer it down. And I think for me, it was the weight, the pressure of perfection that was crushing the entire experience for me. The first thing that stood out really was composition. And composition is king in photography. I think that's a baseline understanding. And I've since come to realize that the king is no king without subject. And those two really shouldn't be presented as separately. They are equal and they are intertwined. And so much time I spent studying composition and really using composition as a tool, as you should, by the way. For various reasons, you should know pleasing composition because it's pleasing to the eye. And then you should know how to break pleasing composition and to really create striking composition that's not the norm and that grabs you like, oh, I may have seen that subject a million times, but I've never seen it presented that way or in that composition. So, I mean, that's super important. But what I always seem to end up at the end of the day is to the hardcore fact that it's okay to have a shitty composition or a questionable composition as long as the subject or the vibe or the reason or what you're showcasing is on display. Composition really doesn't need to be perfect, right? And I always come back to this Cartier-Bresson image that everyone talks about when they talk about composition. And by the way, that image is very interesting to me. The one with the kid jumping over the puddle. Hey, there are certain parts of me that don't find it special at all, and there's certain parts of me that get geeked about it. And then as a street photographer, the real value in that image is understanding that you don't control shit around here, right? You either in place to capture it or you're not. And that's where luck plays a part. And that composition of that image, when people talk about composition in regards to that image, I think it comes off as his masterful ability to place subjects in a way where the composition is just wow. And like, he's a street photographer, fam. Like, he don't place nothing nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, you absorb the environment and you hope to be able to put yourself in a place that moments will unravel in front of you. And the dude is dope. He's got a lot of dope work. Obviously, he was masterful at that, right place, right time, and right place, right time with the right tool and understanding his tool. But I don't think composition is the way people portray it to be, and it sent me down a path that I had to do a lot of reverse engineering to get back to the point. You know, composition is pleasing, composition is king, but it only in relations to your subject. And once I started to understand that my subject is king, I obsessed a lot less over composition. Doesn't mean I won't tighten some things up in Photoshop or Lightroom, but it means I wouldn't be in Photoshop and Lightroom and trying to re-engineer that moment and saying, I wished I was a few degrees over to the left or the right. Like, fuck that. Are you capable of seeing the special moment that is unfolded here? That's it. I'm done. Perfection in exposure. Boy, oh boy, was this a crazy one. So not only am I a professional photographer, portraits, events, engagements, yada, yada, yada. I consider myself an artistic photographer. Street photography, macro work, virtual photography. I had to do a video on virtual photography. I would love to get a lot of my virtual photography in front of you guys and get your feedback. Perfection and exposure is a very touchy subject for me here. And again, I had to do a lot of reverse engineering to not fall into these traps. So, you need to learn your camera. You know, we all know the exposure triangle, your f-stop, your shutter speed, and your ISO. And then there are various other tools within there that can help control this. You're talking your exposure compensation dial. You're talking image stabilization, be it from the lens or the sensor. You're talking external light, be it from your flash, off-camera, a speed light, or off-camera flash. All of these different things. There are very few resources that I have come across that have explained this to me in a healthy way. And, you know, there's no real baseline to what proper exposure is. And because of that, you kind of arrive to the histogram. And histogram etiquette is, yeah, well, as long as most of your tones are in the middle of that graph. So as long as your graph is kind of like this, and most of the data is in the middle, you're generally aight. That is not false. However, in an artistic world where I'm in street photography day or night, I quite enjoy a lot of nighttime street photography. So you can see why this drove me crazy when it shouldn't have been, because I'm thinking, or I was led to believe, that most of my data needs to be in the middle of the histogram, and that is a perfectly, properly exposed image. You know what I would end up with a lot of the time? Some grainy, noisy ass photos, blown out highlights. And so what am I gonna do? Am I gonna shoot street photography and bracket images and come back and be like, no, I'm not doing that. The point here is you don't need to capture a properly exposed image that has the data mostly in the middle. You need to essentially, going back to the subject, right? You need to be able to accentuate the subject that you're taking, and whatever light and however that happens is totally up to you. In the world of portraits, I can agree that you don't want a dark ass portrait, but also there are instances where you would want a moody portrait. There are instances where, you know, you don't need all the soft light in the world to make it look like it was daylight. And there are instances where everybody wants to look like a fucking Apple commercial and all white everything. However, even in those instances, there are nuances about what is proper and improper lighting. And again, I struggle to say that there is a perfection of exposure, because to my eye, a lot of other photographers' work is way too hot, And that's okay. I tend to like a little bit, I shoot underexposed a lot, by the way, because I like to protect highlights. But a lot of photographers, I think their images are too bright. And then there's a ton of other photographers on the other side of it. Oh, well, your images are too dark. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. You know, and me learning to get away from the, damn, is this bright enough? And then that driving settings when I'm out in the field, and that starting to really unravel the capabilities of my camera, because now instead of shooting at f8 to make sure I get everything in focus, I'm shooting at f4 to letting enough light, because I feel like I don't want this shot to be dark. But then I get home and I was like, fuck, the one piece that I need is not in focus because I shot at f4 and I should have shot at f8, right? Like, learning where that pain in the ass process occurred for me left me in a much better place, and today I can let go of the perfection of exposure. Yo, some shit be dark, some shit be bright. It's not that big of a deal. Perfection in editing. Editing, post-process, editing, whatever you want to call it, super dope. Super dope. And I wish that at an early stage in my career, I was able to decouple the two, photography and editing. For me, for a very long time, the two are the same. And, you know, there are very real instances and arguments to be had where the two are the same. However, I think the amount of resources and time that I put into editing, I would love to get back 50% of that. Because I would have spent more time shooting and learning the camera, or marketing, or networking, and gaining more clients, or meeting more wonderful people in the industry. But it is what it is. And today I'm here to say we really should let go or revisit the conversation of editing and why we edit, because a lot of people edit to make perfect or to fix the imperfections of the camera. And, you know, that to me is very interesting. I did a video on the channel a while back about getting it right in camera, and that was my journey about learning to really remove editing from the scenario and learning how to get the shot right in camera. And today I really do appreciate that approach in my creative work. Maybe less in my professional work, right? Because people are paying me for the for portraits and whatnot, and they're paying me to bring out a whimsical version of themselves that they didn't know exist. And I do agree that editing should be a part of that world. However, you know, in my creative work and even in my professional work, I've been dialing back the editing some. So I tend to do a lot less of like high frequency separation for a lot of my clients. I do some dodge and burning and some blemish removal and stuff like that. But I think it was a very healthy realization and an exercise for me to dial back the editing, because it allowed me to appreciate the moment that was captured in camera. And it also spiraled into this real like love for Fuji as a brand, because in Fuji, you know, you've got these film recipes, and really it allows you to just capture a moment with a film recipe, and that's it. I don't want to edit it. I don't want to touch it. I'm done here. And I think if a lot of you would just step back, and even if you can't assess why and how you should be editing, try just dialing back your editing 30 or 40%. Try not going all the way in. And I get it, it's fun for a lot of people. And I find that some photographers are one side of the fence. Either they're 30%, you know, on the camera side where they can get the shot, but they're Photoshop ninjas. They're 70% on the other side, or vice versa. you know, I think you can have some value in scaling back the editing and just appreciating the subject that you've captured it in its untouched state. And I'm not against like removing some distractions here or there, but just let shit rock, you know what I mean? And really, these days, my perfection is not tied to editing. My perfection is tied to portraying a subject in its best light. And that could include editing, or it could not include editing. I make that decision now. Versus before, I felt like that decision was solely tied to editing. And I used to fall into the trap of I'll just take the picture, I'll fix it in post. That's a rabbit hole you want to avoid. Believe you me. I want to take a quick break for some house cleaning. If you're enjoying the video thus far, please hit that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. If you get a chance, go back on the channel, check out 2 or 3 other videos. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you as a mainstay around here. But I have a question, and please feel free to answer this in the comment section below. Is there anything about your photography that you obsess about? Tricky question, right? Obsessing is never really a good thing. And we kind of hide obsession behind passion. We think it's the same thing. Like, it's not really. Obsession really ain't a good thing. And for me, obsession was editing. I spent so much time learning Photoshop and the tools and color grading and all this crazy shit. And at the end of the day, I started to notice it's just not really making my images any better. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a graphic artist. I'm a photographer. I should be focusing on my subject first, not fixing it in post. And post editing, post production became a crutch for me, and I had to do a lot of work to get up out of that. And for me, it taught me that I should really be scrutinizing myself and looking for things I'm obsessing about, because they may not be healthy. And the dope thing about attacking things you obsess about is you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot more about why you do it, and you start to come up with answers to questions you never knew you had. So what is it about your craft that you obsess about that you think might put you on a good journey to becoming better? My last piece about perfection that I have learned is the perfection of gear. This is an easy one for everyone to relate to, right? You watch the, I don't know, new camera comes out and there's like 50 videos on my feed about this camera, and you've got the Chris Nichols, these guys that I quite love. You've got the Peter McKinnons, and we've all got our favorite YouTubers that we watch to learn all about the camera, because we all digest the way they sort of regurgitate what's new and happening with this new camera. And then you get the like, oh man, this thing's got 15 stops of dynamic range and my camera's only got 12. I need to sell this shit because my camera's no longer good. Right? Like, god damn, that's such a strong thing to fight. That consumerism, that like it, oh my god, it's so heavy. And it took a lot for me to get over that, being a geartographer. Damn, what is his name? The Micro Four Thirds master who's now shooting Sony. Joe Edelman, that was his phrase, geartographer. And I thought that was such a good term, because god damn it, I know exactly what that is, and I can be that for sure. The way I got up out of it though is I really started to assign a job. So everything I do photography, and the job, let's call it portraits, right? People want portraits. They would like for me to capture the best version of themselves. They want to see that on camera. because Sony came out with the a7 IV, my a7 II many moons ago at this point, still a full frame camera, by the way, still got image stabilization, by the way, still has the ability for me to use off camera flash lighting, by the way. None of this stuff went away because the Sony a7 IV is now up megapixels by 20%, more dynamic range, and a better this and a better that. The gear ultimately doesn't matter. And there's some great resources out there that I've come across that have explained this in various ways. But this is one of those things where you got to learn this for yourself, right? You'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, it doesn't matter," but you don't have you don't have context around why it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where you kind of got to get knee deep in it, and then sort of save yourself from drowning. And then you'll learn why it doesn't matter. So today I'm shooting this video on a Panasonic G7, not a GH4 or GH3, a G7. The only thing I'm missing here is I would love to have a camera that shoots 4K 60 so I can slow down this footage if I would like to, but I'm not doing any slow motion footage here. So you see how I say but. The reason I say but is because at some point I had to stop myself from saying, ooh, the new GH5. Let's see what that's about, right? Or the new GH4. Oh, look, it does 4K 60. Like, what the? I'm not using that right now. I don't have a job that requires slow motion 4K footage, right? As is, I damn near don't even need to be shooting this in 4K, right? There's still a ton of people out there putting in work on YouTube at 1080p. The TV upstairs in my living room is still 1080p. So like, what the hell, right? So this is what I mean by keeping focus on the job and allowing the tool to be the tool. So because Sony comes out or Panasonic comes out or Fuji comes out with a new version doesn't mean that the tool you're using to do the job stops doing the job. You know what I mean? And now as a professional photographer, I kind of understand, and not kind of, I do understand why you walk into photography studios and see 6 and 7 year old cameras, and you're like, the fuck? Does this guy know what he's doing? Yet he's charging $2,000 for a headshot. Of course he knows what he's doing. It's because he didn't lose sight of the fact that the job and the tool that he's using are still intertwined and still relevant to the results, that he doesn't go out and change his camera. That $2,000 that he just charged for that headshot is $2,000 in his pocket. It's not $2,000 in Sony's pocket because he went and bought the new camera. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, the last 2 years have been a lot in terms of restructuring how I view my craft and my business as a professional photographer. A lot of lessons taught, and now I'm on the look for obsessions and perfection. And really, now that I'm able to really relinquish perfection in my work, I find it to be a lot more enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like, working an event, so what? A few images come out blurry. It happens, fam. I'm delivering for a 3-hour event. I'm probably delivering 150 to 160 images, right? I probably took about 600 images at that event. I've become okay delivering 4 or 5 images that are not quite tack sharp, but they're moments where people are happy out of their fucking minds. And I want my client to look at that image and remember, wow, we had a great time at that birthday party. They're not even gonna know it's not tack sharp because they're looking at it on their phone and on social media. They're not gonna double click and zoom in like, oh, I can't see the reflection of the camera in the pupil or the iris. Like, fail. Ramon gets 1 star on Google. It's not how it works, baby. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. My name is Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace.